Right. Hey, welcome to the Our Amazing podcast, where each week we have a different guest from Boston in Lincolnshire. And each week we ask the guests the same questions and their opinion on the most amazing person, object, animal, quote, book, and finally, their opinion on the most amazing thing ever. So this week's guest is Matt Warman, and we all most probably know Matt best from being the MP for Boston and Skegness, and he's been the MP in here since 2015. And in that time, since he's been an MP, he's held different roles in the departments of digital culture, media and sport, and also the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, both very long department names. And both those departments pulled on Matt's previous experience of 16 years at the Daily Telegraph, where he reported mostly on technology advancements in quite an unprecedented time, I guess, where there was massive amounts of change with Facebook coming about and Twitter and all of these other ones. And he's also interviewed some really famous people. So you've interviewed Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the World Wide Web. And if I remember a conversation we had sort of early in about 2015, you've interviewed Bill Gates as well. Is that right?
Yes, and
in one day, a flight there and back, because I saw one day.
No, this was
Seattle back and forth. Is that right?
So in the surreal world of technology PR, somehow the most sensible thing to do for the launch of some version of Windows was to go to New York for lunch, which prior to the abolition of Concord was not completely insane. Whereas I think it is completely insane. This was before people worried as much as they do today about the carbon footprint, and to be fair, before Zoom and Teams and all that were quite the thing they were. But yes, still clearly bonk.
Yeah. I remember you telling me you're quite tired. I said, you look tired. And you was like, yeah, well, I've flown. It's literally a couple of hours was all you were there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So our guest this week is Matt Warman, MP. So let's crack on, Matt. So your opinion on the most amazing person ever.
So I thought about this for long and hard, and you said, what I part of me wanted to come up with someone surprising and slightly lesser known. Part of me thought, well, obviously there are people like Churchill. There's the sort of big, obviously deserving but kind of cliched figures. And for better or worse, I landed on Queen Elizabeth II, the late Queen. And I say that largely because you think of all the things that her reign encompassed, all of the things that she to some extent influenced, even though the sort of agency of the monarchy is sort of somewhat contested. And I just think what an incredible life to have had, and to have ended up being I mean, the cliche of sort of the rock of the nation, all of that stuff, to have been a sort of steadying presence in tumultuous times, whether it's COVID or whatever. I just think that is genuinely inspirational, and it is proper public service, isn't it?
Yeah, because she's the longest serving monarch by quite a few years, and wasn't born to be the monarch either, if I remember right, if my history's good. When she was born,
no, exactly. And the idea that you are sort of born into the royal family but not, and so I think obviously still in an age when it was expected that she would be that public service would shape her life, but that's very different from being the queen or the king. So I think to have discovered that was to be your lot, and especially the circumstances where she discovered it when she was abroad on what was a sort of much more ambitious kind of scale of tour that are going around the world now than it was now. All of that stuff, everything is extraordinary in so many ways.
Yeah. What would you? And this is probably quite hard to pick from 70 plus years of being the monarch. What would you say was the most extraordinary? Have you got any extraordinary feat, or some of the most extraordinary things? I think.
Well, I mean, I was thinking about this. Yeah, I was thinking about this before. And I was sort of torn between somehow during the war, especially, translating the monarchy from being something that was incredibly remote, that was incredibly sort of aristocratic in the old-fashioned sense, to being this woman who could strip down an engine, who was working on the home front, and was somehow combining that with inspiring people that to still keep the faith in the possibility of British victory, even when she was visiting bombed out sites in London, all of that stuff. So there's partly that. And there is partly the all of the stuff right at the end of her life around COVID, where suddenly she became this figure saying, even though it's not her phrase, that quote, we'll meet again when we were all locked down, I think was one of the few genuinely sort of nation uniting moments, and something that clearly did give people real hope. But the other thing I was going to say was also that she obviously was not perfect. Like I think the way that the monarchy handled some of the stuff around the death of Princess Diana, I think clearly did not strengthen the institution of the monarchy, which was her priority in so many ways. So I think being able to do that, to learn from those mistakes, and to come back so much stronger, is perhaps not something we immediately associate with kings and queens, but is I think hugely important as well.
Yeah, yeah. So she learned from the lessons, and yeah. And I always think also when she was sat on her own in the funeral for Prince Philip,
Mm,
it was that was that it sort of indicated there wasn't a difference between the monarch and us. We all had to do the same, and she did
yeah,
the same as well.
yeah.
And I thought that was quite powerful.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of this stuff is sort of she was somehow, she was someone who felt present in everybody's lives in some way or other, whether it was following the rules like you've just described, or whether it was sort of as people got older, so being feels like a permanent presence in the life of everyone in the country. I just think is an extraordinary thing, and no one ever doubted that she was trying to do the right thing, even when the right thing is hard. And you look at how she transformed the Commonwealth, and also to some extent how then Prince Charles worked on that as well. I think huge impact on the planet as a whole is something totally remarkable. And that's obviously why you saw that massive outpouring of grief at the end of her life. And I was, I mean, I was lucky enough to incredibly briefly meet her and Prince Philip a couple of times, and it made, in some ways, it makes you realise that you didn't. Everyone felt like they'd met her. You didn't have to have done it physically at all.
Mm.
And I think it's a very that unifying thing is hugely important. And I think we will we won't obviously King Charles will be his own person, all of that stuff, but we won't see the like of her again. We won't. It's very unlikely we'll have someone reigning for that period of time over a period so tumultuous, or all of that.
Yeah, with so much difference from
Mm.
when she became queen in 1953 to when she, or 1952, sorry, when she became queen, and to when she stood down, when she died 70 years later. The difference in the country, and to be the head of
Yeah,
state that whole time, and to manage that amount of change is quite remarkable, isn't it?
yeah, isn't it just?
Yeah, yeah. So I can see why that was your pick. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Queen Elizabeth II before we move on? Or was part of your story?
No, I mean, I suppose the only other thing is, and this is obviously a sort of unusual work angle, but if you, and I know you have, because I was there at the time. If you've been to Westminster Hall, where there was the lying in state, when you are there and it isn't being used for the lying in state or some enormous sort of address by President Zelensky or something like that, it feels like the sort of biggest corridor in Europe. It's a very it's a space that doesn't have an obvious use. And I think the other thing that struck me, and will stick with me forever, is that sense of, this is what these great, grand, almost 1,000-year-old buildings were for. and finally you sort of see them put to their proper purpose, and that I think is something that will stay with me forever as well.
Yeah, so it changes that environment that you probably walk through every day, and it just changed it
Yeah,
into its sort of true purpose of sort of a state building that
exactly.
has a massive
Yeah.
effect. Yeah, yeah, because I think we came to visit with the Samaritans, and yeah, it was after that, wasn't it? And yeah, yeah, I remember that room. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just a very unique life, like you said. So yeah, so move. Obviously, seeing what your answer is. So this is quite a big jump, isn't it, between these two? So what's your opinion on the most amazing object?
This so I
Like a
wanted to
cheat.
pick something that captured the sort of randomness of human ingenuity. And to be honest, I could have picked almost any food stuff. But I landed on cheese. And I think that's large. I was tempted by beer. I was tempted by bread. But it's one of those things where I find it almost unimaginable that someone would sort of go through all the process that you need to make bread or cheese or whatever, and then think, well, I'll eat it. I mean, look, it's in some cases it's covered in mold. It's got mold all the way through it. I'll give that a go. That just seems bonkers. Now, obviously, I'm being slightly reductive in the sense that someone did not wake up in the morning one day a million years ago and invent the kind of cheese or whatever food that we have today. But I do think that sense of there are things that human beings have done that are it doesn't feel to me that counterintuitive to sort of once someone's worked out that wheels go round, then to sort of think, how do I make wheels go round without me having to push them? Like it's not a million miles from the wheel to the car, if that makes sense, or
Yeah,
the wheel to the railway. Whereas I just know that on a purely personal level, I would not have the creativity to do all the intricate and counterintuitive processes that have come to make up all the things that we now think of as perfectly normal foodstuffs.
yeah.
So yeah, it is a slightly silly example, but it's also a way of trying to express wonderment at the creativity of human beings.
No, I have to agree with that because I often wondered what happened with milk. Did someone see a cow suckling and a calf suckling and think, I'll have some of that? And then why did we start drinking milk from cows? And
Yeah.
was cheese a happy accident, or do you think it was planned? We'll never know. Is it where they just left the cheese and it sort of just started to go off and they then sort of worked
Yeah,
it from there? Or
exactly.
yeah.
Very odd, isn't it?
And do you like all cheese, or did you have like
Yeah.
cheese brought me back from
Yeah,
veganism?
yeah. I'm not. I'm curious about almost all flavors in lots of ways. I actually the thing I don't like particularly is cheese that has been flavored with fruit or with random other sort of outside products. Someone is joining the two things. I did once try beer flavored cheese, which I apparently is very popular, but I did not think was a great success.
Two things you like but not mixed together.
No, no, exactly.
What?
I'm
So do
perfectly
you
happy
like the
with
moldy
cranberries. There's
cheese?
no cream and cheese.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes, yeah, no. I'm quite the sorts of things that people look at and think, gosh, that stinks. I'm quite game for trying. But and also I think I'm definitely one of those people where you go to sort of some restaurants or pubs or whatever, and there's three different desserts or the cheese board, and I think you're either the kind of person who is prepared to countenance the cheese board, and I definitely am. So.
you're willing to. Do you draw the line at any of the plastic squares or the cheese ones, or
Oh,
is
yeah, no, I'm definitely on the less what would you call that? The less commercial end of the market, I suppose.
I probably fall on that?
There's it's interesting the Limbank cheese place not that far away in the constituency that does things like Skegness Blue, but also does a lot of the sort of flavored with various different sorts of cheeses. I'm definitely a big fan of the Skegness Blue, and I'm very glad that the other flavors are a great commercial success.
Yeah, yeah. Because yeah, I'm see I'm the opposite of you. I like the sort of triangles, the squares, and the fruit in it, and but not with the mold. It's like I don't get the mold. And at what point did someone decide think that that would be a good one to eat as well? It's a little bit
Exactly.
like
Exactly. It's baffling. The whole process is baffling.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if there is a history of how we came to find that.
Yeah, no, well. I did think that the danger of suggesting this was that obviously all we've both done in this process is reveal our massive great ignorance. I'm sure there is
Yeah.
a biography of cheese that I could have looked up on Wikipedia or
No,
bought
no, but if
or
you're
whatever. But I think a degree of naive wonderment the risk of sounding like Alan Partridge about the whole thing is not a bad
yeah, yeah. Sometimes you don't need to know how. I think in the Bridget podcast, she was saying, "I don't know how
thing.
things work. It's not important. It's just I like it," and
I think
that's
so.
that's the truth. What have you ever tried vegan cheese?
Yes, I have. That was not a success.
No,
In
no,
in my
me neither. Yeah, I was a vegan for a while and I didn't like it, and then I came back to cheese brought me back. And what I would like, do you know what I would like about cheese if they could do it, and I'd pay extra like I would with free range eggs, is if they had like some sort of a ethical level of cheese. I don't know whether
I feel like that probably exists already, doesn't it? In some form or other. I mean, it's interesting. So Heather Mills, the sort of huge vegan entrepreneur, has recently bought a factory in Boston, and I was talking to her, and she was she was saying with great confidence that vegan cheese has cracked it and is now able to rival real cheese. So maybe I should give it a go
yeah,
again.
maybe I should revisit and see if they can do the bacon.
But I mean,
I'm still
certainly
vegetarian.
my previous encounters were not a success. So
Yeah. Well,
I don't
might
want to say
be
cheese
worth
in
a
my voice.
try.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, because I
Yes.
guess vegan cheese is being made at this factory, is it? Where that Heather Mills has took over. Is that right? Is
Yeah.
vegan
Yeah.
cheese made?
Yeah. Well, so it's the old plant and bean factory, and she'll be making she hasn't quite worked out precisely what they'll be doing on the various different lines, but certainly across her various business interests, then cheese is a big and huge success.
Interesting. Might have to try that.
Yeah.
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 So we got the Skegness blue, and we could have the I don't know the Boston vegan one.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could go either way, couldn't
Yeah,
it?
it could go either way on that. Yeah, so that's your cheese. So yeah, so cheese is your most amazing object, and I can sort of I can get that. Like I said, it brought me back from veganism. I can go without cheese, so that's got to be pretty amazing to bring me back from that. So right, so that takes us on to your. Unless there's anything else you want to say about your cheese.
Oh, I think we've done lots of cheese.
Lots of cheese. Right. So let's go on to your favorite, your most amazing animal in your opinion.
So again, this is one where I didn't have to think hard at all. I think manatees or sea cows, as they're differently known, are the if you ever seen one in water, it is impossible. I hasten to add, ever seen a real one, although I would like to. They are the most sort of extraordinary looking, sort of weirdly graceful, but also not graceful at all creatures. They are also genuinely the inspiration for the mermaid. So there is this
Oh,
theory that a manatee sort of standing upright, so to speak, which they do, sticking out of the water, could look like from a distance without a telescope, someone possibly with both your eyes closed, what
creepy.
sailors came to think of as mermaids. And the main thing to take from this is the sort of huge contrast between the beauty of the sort of traditional mermaid, all of those cliches, and the fact that manatees are not uh, beautiful in that sense. So the mermaids that sailors were seeing were actually sort of incredibly ugly creatures, but especially when they're out of the water. So yeah, I just think that their size and their shape and their inspiration for folklore is pretty extraordinary.
So can manatees sort of like push themselves vertically out of the water? Is that sort of like
Yeah, they can sort of they can sort of stand up for
stand
a
up?
bit, and they do in some of the shallows of the American coast, apparently. And it does definitely happen, whether it is just a myth about a myth that they are the inspiration, but certainly there's enough around some of the Columbus voyages and all that some academics think that this could be the case.
Yeah, because I had to Google, and as soon as I Google, I was like, oh right, yeah, I have seen it before, and it's sort of quite a bulbous
Exactly.
head. But they came up that they're really kind, apparently, and quite fearless, and they would
Mm.
approach. humans.
Yeah,
So
and given that they're pretty big, then I just think everything about them makes me think I should, rather than all the sort of, if you're going to have a dream holiday, rather than going whale watching or something like that, I think I'll go manatee spotting.
oh, and where would they be? Where are they?
Well, so the
Atlantic?
obvious place to go is yeah, you can go to America, which so this is not I mean, as dream holidays go, it's not going to outer space. Although that could be more of a nightmare. Yeah, it's not impossible at all. It's just I think it's a pretty odd thing to do.
Yeah, yeah, because it also said when I was quick searching about it, it said that they're not part of the dolphin or whale family. They're part of their own. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah, they are their own thing. There's a couple of varieties, but they are basically their own thing. Which partly explains why they have the ridiculous sea cow name, because obviously they are. I mean, they do live in the sea, but they are not cows. So yeah, I just think the whole thing is marvelous.
so you said it was an easy choice. Is this been your favorite animal for your most
Oh
amazing
yeah, yeah.
for quite a while? When did this come
I
about?
think I think it sort of started because it's quite a funny word in itself
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
The manatee bit, although sea cow is also not unamusing. I'd always been a little bit, that sounds ridiculous. In the same way that I just think sort of those childish enthusiasms turn into adult enthusiasm.
Yeah, yeah, no, you sort of tend to pick things up from a child. Yeah, yeah. I've never really looked at them or thought of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I never look at a mermaid the same
No,
way. Because
no,
it's sort of
exactly, exactly.
because it looks more like like if you look quick, more of a Shrek look
Yeah,
than a mermaid. But
yes, exactly. So
but
it turns out that mermaids and Shrek are the same family of mythical creatures.
there we go. That's an animal that I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but like, yeah, I've not really thought of it. A manatee or manatee,
Manatee.
manatee, manatee. Yeah, they're described as. What did it describe when I was reading it? It says manatees have a kind and fearless demeanor because of a lack of natural predators. They also have not developed an elaborate escape response or aggressive mechanism, so they tend to handle most situations with an incredible degree of gentleness and respond warmly to people, which
Mm.
which can have its other problems because they can become sort of too reliant and too close. And you wouldn't guess because it's huge, isn't it? It's a huge sort of
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, to be honest, there is also a bit of me that sort of thinks, well, maybe they're best left alone, in the same way that going to the Galapagos Islands has sort of become a fraught thing of sort of, is it the right thing ecologically or the wrong thing ecologically or whatever. I sort of think in some ways maybe the manatee that exists in my head is possibly better than
oh,
going on and screwing
yeah,
it up in real life. But there we are. It's
yeah,
important to have our
never meet your
dream holiday.
heroes. Yeah, never meet
Yeah,
your heroes. It
exactly.
could change it. But I'd imagine it'd be an amazing experience, like similar
Mm.
to whale watching. I can imagine seeing
Yes.
one, especially if you can get
Yeah,
it
yeah,
sort of stepping out the water and squint your eyes and see if you can see a mermaid.
yeah.
That could be pretty good. Yeah. So that's your most amazing animal is the manatee. Manatee. Get it right. Manatee. So before we move on to your most amazing quote, we're going to have a quick break where we're going to look at the most amazing poll of the week, the most amazing quote of the week, the most amazing fact of the week, and the most amazing story of the week. And then we'll be back.
Lovely.
Mm. r-amazing.com, where we find the amazing in the ordinary every day. This week we're going to look at the most amazing poll, fact, quote, and stories. And the most amazing poll this week is about some really crazy animated gifs, like this one of when you mix snake venom with blood. Look at this. Look at what it does to the blood. Absolutely amazing and crazy. You can see why it's hard to survive that. Another one is explaining Pythagoras' theorem. Another one's about how a dog drinks from water, and it's not how we imagine. It scoops it up on the back of its tongue, not the front, and it pulls it into its mouth. Amazing. And then we've got a ladybird landing and how a chain's made, and this crazy one about when a spring falls. Yeah. So there's another 6 of these amazing gifts. If you like it, upvote it. If you don't like it, downvote it. So that's that. So now let's go to the most amazing fact. And the most amazing fact today is about a pirate's eye patch, which is crazy because I always used to think that a pirate's eye patch was over an eye because the pirate had lost an eye, but it isn't. By lifting their eye patch when going below decks, pirates can adjust to quickly see in the dark. So the eye patch isn't about losing an eye. It's got a practical function, so that one eye is to see in light and the other eye is to see quickly in the dark. Amazing. Now the quote, and this quote is going to be a political quote because of who our guest is today, and the quote is going to be a Winston Churchill quote, and it feels quite prominent this week for me. It says, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." And if you like that Winston Churchill quote, click the heart. If you don't like it, click the X. And that's one of 15 quotes that you can vote for on Winston Churchill quotes. So now let's go to the story of the week. And this is just an amazing story about cats. Where is it? There we go. About a cat at the top of an escalator, and how people are just so kind with cats, don't want to disturb it. And just we all walk around, everyone's telling people, and I think it quite sums up the relationship between humans and cats. We're very accommodating to cats' needs. So that's the Amazings this week. You can check them out and other ones on the website at r-amazing.com. Don't forget to have a look down the side here to look at our books and the other podcasts with Katie, Bridget, Richard and Jane. There's lots of other quotes you can look at, lots of other polls, lots of other facts. Don't forget to follow our Facebook page, Instagram page and YouTube to keep up to date with the podcasts and everything else. So now let's go back to the podcast. And now we're back. so now we're back after the advert. So this takes us on to Matt's most amazing quote, and I hadn't heard of this one.
So having been quite frivolous in my previous choices with cheese and manatees, then the favourite book and the favourite quote are shamelessly pretentious. And actually, this is the short version of this is literally. It's from Shakespeare's Richard II. It is "Let us sit upon the ground," and it is a moment where King Richard II sort of fallen from grace to some extent. Suddenly it encapsulates the fact that fine. He might still be a king, but he is not above all the things that everyone else has to do. The sort of symbolism of a king sitting on the ground, I think, is something that literally can keep people grounded in a very good way. It's a great play overall, obviously, but I think that one moment of a king being quite literally brought down to earth is sobering and instructive.
So it was one of a difficult moment for him, and he had to sit on. He was saying that he was sitting on the ground with all of his troops, and everyone was equal. Is that pretty much?
So it's not conscious. It's not completely conscious in that. So the sort of slightly longer bit of it is for God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed, some slain in war, some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed, and there is some obvious sort of self-reflection going on there. But there is also the sense that he is mortal, he is fallible, all of that stuff. And I think you used that quote a minute ago, "Never meet your heroes." Actually, despite having a T-shirt that says "Never meet your heroes" on it, I'm a big fan of meeting your heroes. I think being understanding that people are people, and people are fallible, and also you can only learn from people by meeting them broadly. I think all of that stuff is something that's encapsulated in that quote. I did an English degree many years ago, so I was sort of given to this kind of pretentiousness. But I do think that sense of how do you make sure that people understand that whatever job they do, however, whether they are surgeons saving lives or MPs doing whatever MPs do, and all that, there is always some merit in reminding yourself of your fallibility and your groundedness.
And your groundedness. Because it sounded like this, like when you was talking about it initially about sitting on the ground and that he was similar to everyone else when we were on the ground. It took me back to your first choice of the Queen when she was sat on her own in the at the funeral of Prince Philip. It was a grounded. Was it an attempt to say that we're all the same, even as a king, I have to sit on the same ground as you. Is that sort of what it was saying is a great leveler, or have I missed the point?
So I think no, I think it is definitely a great. All of this stuff is a great. The understanding that we are all on the same level ultimately is a hugely important part of normal life, isn't it? And I think it's just I'm one of the great things about this job that I do is that you have to meet normal everyday people and talk to them about the issues that are troubling them, and then take that back to London and try and synthesize that into what is good for lots of people rather than that one individual that you met who might have a problem that is relatively easy to solve or might have a problem that is completely intractable. And how do you take the micro and learn from it to turn it into sort of macro policy? And how do you understand that there are inevitably consequences of that of that stuff that means there are winners and losers? And for instance, and this is not a saving lives kind of example. When we were doing the broadband program on at DCMS, then we had to work out how do you maximize the amount of physical connections that you're going to get for the least amount of public money, while also making sure that nobody gets left behind. And one of the things we had to do was basically say, right, you do everything that you can to encourage the private sector to roll out everything it will do, and you have to choose what you think is the best possible moment to say, right, we are now going to say the government will sweep in, so to speak. There'll be one big contract that will do the rest of the connections. And you know that choosing that moment, there will be a few people who would have been connected sooner if you'd left it for a few weeks, or would have not been connected at all if you'd left it for a few weeks. And there are winners and losers. And I think the most satisfying thing about a job where it is physically about an individual connection to an individual's house, but you're dealing with a £5 billion budget that is about connecting everybody's house. The most satisfying thing about having done it is that it's still in someone else's charge. It's still sort of rolling across the country. We haven't yet really encountered a problem that we didn't foresee. And that's which isn't to say there aren't problems at all. Of course there are. But the idea that some of it is that some people are losing out, but on one level, but ultimately the national interest is being served. That sort of thing. I think making sure that policy is grounded in real people's lives is a long-winded version of King saying, "Let us sit upon the ground."
Yeah. So you're all the same, but like putting it all together can be very complex.
Exactly.
Everyone should have access to fast internet,
yeah.
And they're completely right. And a member of the public saying that to you, and then putting it into place so that everyone can have it is a very complex.
Exactly.
Complex thing. Yeah, it's a very interesting concept, isn't it? So let's sit upon the ground and Yeah, yeah. So had Richard II lost? What had happened to him to say that? Was people turning on him at that time? He'd lost the war.
So the story is about his essentially all the various travails of being king at that point. The point in this play in the play when he says it is when he is sort of at his lowest ebb, if you can put it like that. But he's also, I think he's discovering. But in some ways, a big chunk of the play is him discovering things about himself, and obviously, the point of Shakespeare is that they're all in some ways universally relevant, even if none of us is King Lear or King Richard or
Yeah, it
whoever.
applies to everyone.
So yeah, yeah, exactly. It's sort of universal applicability, but and I think in some ways as well, it's why it makes me think that we are things like those non-vocational degrees, the sort of pure sciences, pure humanities. You go on to do things that use those skills, use those insights, even if most people, I mean, I was relatively unusual, but I did go on to become a kind of writer, but most people who do English degrees don't become writers. Most people who do physics degrees don't become physicists. Like, you don't, that's not the point. You need to make sure the degree is of a decent quality, not that the subject is immediately relevant to a future job.
Yeah, yeah, got you. Perfect. So, is there anything else you'd like to say about that quote before we move on to your most amazing book?
No, let's do the book, because that's even more contentious.
Yeah, yeah, you did get me googling, and then I was like, yeah. So Matt, your most amazing book.
So the most amazing book is a book called In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. It is amazing, not least because of its incredible length. Proust died before he really finished it, or certainly before he edited it, which means that there are bits of it where characters who have apparently died come back to life, because presumably he would have edited them in some sort of order. But yeah, 3,000 slightly chaotic pages, but it is not, it's not a sort of, it's not, it is a pure story of real people's lives, doing relatively mundane things, and I think in some ways the thing that the joke is a bit like, so there are certain books where Ulysses, Proust, Finnegan's Wake, that sort of stuff, where a read copy of them is much rarer than an unread copy of them, and I think there is I sort of read the whole thing out of stubbornness, wanting to not be one of those people that hadn't that had given up, but it was there is everything in it. Like, whether it is, there's a character who always sticks in my mind, who's a housekeeper, sort of nursemaid, who is she sort of she cries reading the newspaper every day when she hears massive sort of stories of mass death in whatever it might be, but she is actually incredibly cruel to individuals, and I think that sort of, it's got little vignettes like that throughout it. You're going to say, what's the plot? There isn't. I would say, I don't want to spoil it for people who might read it, but that's a vanishingly rare category of people. The short answer is there isn't one. It is a story of human life, growing up, getting old, all of that stuff. And one of the things that I remember after I'd finished it, a tutor at Durham said, "Isn't it brilliantly boring?" And I was like, what do you mean? And he sort of said, well, one of the amazing things about it is it reflects human life, and lots of human life. You have to plow through boring bits to get to interesting bits, and you have to have some faith that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm not sure whether, to be honest, the light at the end of the tunnel is the sense of satisfaction of getting through 3,500 pages, or whatever it actually is, or whether it is just the overall sense of understanding that you've seen these people through their lives. But anyway, yes, sorry, that's a long rambling failure to explain this choice.
In Search of Lost Time, so it's a lot of time to read it. Those
yes,
it was 3,000 pages. Yeah. It's not one that I would ever read. I did quickly Google to see what the synopsis was and what the overview was, and it said it was a narrator was reflecting on the loss of time and lack of meaning in the world. Do you think that's a fair?
Yeah, no, that is fair, but that also sort of corroborates my there isn't really a plot kind of thing. It's it's talking about stuff that's happened, and
it's sort of random.
And sorry,
is it quite random, the book, or does it actually have a?
No, it's not that it's random. It's more that it has it's about that sort of quest to find meaning in daily life, to sort of how do you convince yourself that everything's worthwhile, and again, sort of I have ended up in a job where you are sort of, I suppose, ostentatiously trying to make a difference, whatever the quote might be, or all that sort of stuff. You're trying to do something that has innate meaning. That's fine, but you can't do that sustainably. I think you have to be able to find some kind of meaning and some kind of satisfaction even in the relatively mundane stuff. I'm very bad at that, I should say, but being aware of that failing is a good thing.
Yeah. It also said the novel grapples with the ideas that our memories of people, places, and events are constantly with us. Does it reflect quite a lot on things like, so it talks about the story and then reflects back on it later?
Yeah, so partly that, but also it's that sense that you are the sum total of everything that's happened to you, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. And that is, and I think that is trying to encourage a degree of reflectivity that is. It's easy to sort of hurtle through everyday life and not bother to sit back and think. And again, I'm not holding myself up as a brilliant example of any of this stuff, but I do think that self-consciousness, in a good sense, is really important.
Yeah. Would you read it again?
There are people who have read it several times, and I think they're very brave. I do own two different translations of it. So I have sort of read bits of it twice. I don't know if it would. I mean, yes, is the short answer to your question, but I'm slightly daunted by the prospect.
Yeah, just need a very long holiday and a very, I guess, a long time.
Exactly.
Wow. And out of all those 3,000 pages, what would you say, like, and this is a tough one, a bit like the 70 years with the Queen, what would you think was the strongest message you got out of it, or is that just too much out of the 3,000 pages?
Oh no, I mean, I think it is that value of trying to understand trying to place every sort of experience in a kind of context, and learn something from it, so that time isn't lost or time isn't wasted. I think is hugely valuable, and an impossible task, right? It's completely impossible, but it's a valuable aspiration.
Yeah. And you said about struggling with boredom as well. Is that like the theme of the book? And how do you do in life with boredom? I struggle with boredom. They say the best things to.
So it's interesting whether it's a moot point whether it's a theme of the book or a failing of the book.
Right.
But either way, it is a satisfying part of it in the end.
Yeah. Do you have time to get bored, or you're always too busy, or do you have time where you?
I mean, I would. It would be foolish of someone doing my job to say any of it was boring, of course. But look, all jobs
not
have
work,
their
just life.
exciting moments and their less exciting moments.
Yeah. Cool. Can you still hear me, or have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I thought you froze then for a second. There you go. So, is there anything else you'd like to say about the book before?
No, well, other than that, I would encourage people to read it, and unread copies are widely available in charity shops.
And I suppose one final question: how long did it take you to read those 3,000 pages in 6 volumes?
That's a very good question. It was. Oh, it definitely. I had a period where at least a Christmas and a birthday was definitely the latest volume kind of thing.
Right.
So I would say probably 18 months. I was also at university at the time, so I'm doing other books as well. But yeah, probably about that, maybe a bit less.
Wow. I'm a slow reader, so I can double that.
Yeah.
If I get a spare 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Best use of time. Okay.
Cool. So that's your most amazing book. It's called In the Search of Lost Time, and like you said, it's 6 volumes, 3,000 pages. Wow, impressed. So this takes us on to your opinion on the most amazing thing ever, in your opinion.
So I'm trying. I'm trying. And this is terrible. I'm trying to remember what I wrote, how I expressed this in the end on the form.
Do you want me to give you the one word?
Yeah, go on.
One
Tell
word. You said people.
so I think that sense of the as you can tell, I sort of undernard about how to put this, but that sense of diversity, creativity. I sort of an earlier draft, so to speak, said diversity, but that sort of came. I didn't want it to come across as a sort of the modern sense of diversity, but it is kind of what I mean. It is that sense of what everything is encompassed in human endeavor, all of that stuff. So it's a sort of very mundane cop out on one level, but it's also the only option.
So is it all the different things that all the different people on the planet can do, and how it all collaborates?
Yeah,
Is it that element of it?
exactly, and ultimately, it's conversations with other people that make life worthwhile, right? It's that sense of
Yeah.
achievement, and I think you can't get away from the fact that is the root of all human entertainment, all human progress, all of that stuff.
Yeah, because I read a book where it said that the difference between humans and Neanderthals is we had smaller brains, but we can collaborate and to make stuff happen. And suddenly a few days later, I
Yeah.
watched, I think it was Milton Freeman, I think, who was talking about a
Mm.
pencil and how many people
Yeah.
probably involved in getting that pencil into your hand.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know if you've
exactly,
seen.
exactly.
I
And,
think
and
it's
and let's not get started on cheese.
yeah. Very good point. But yeah. So is it more? So it's more people and how we interact rather than humans, or is because I was like,
No, I
oh,
mean, yeah, no,
why people?
no, it's not the wonder of sort of modern bone density.
More
This is a sort of psychological thing
society.
rather than a biological thing.
Yeah, so it's the society of how we as people make everything happen.
Yeah, exactly. And it's no accident that I've always done jobs where it's been talking to people that's the most important thing. Like when I was sort of reporting on the latest iPhone and all that sort of stuff, like fine, they are exciting objects, but what people do with them and why people came up with them is much more interesting.
Yeah. I always found that with different volunteering things and different things I've done. I'm not so much interested in the money, but more the people and
Yeah,
and
exactly,
and I suppose that's
exactly.
reflected in the 2 departments that you've worked in as well, isn't it? Like the innovation in technology and the culture, media, and sport. They're all very people
Yeah.
based.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to be honest, all government is all about people, and that's what makes it worthwhile and important and hard. But it is and contentious. But also, it is not. Some are more people than others, and in some ways, the sort of I've not worked in sort of work and pensions and that sort of thing, and or the treasury, where it's sort of it's on the face of it, pensions might feel like it's about how much do people get a week once they've retired. In practice, it's about what kind of lives can they live, and that's hugely important.
Yeah, so it's all people. Yeah, I suppose
Yeah,
some feel more
yeah,
people based. A little bit like you were saying about the technology, isn't it? Like you've got the phone and you've got the money, but ultimately it's what
yeah,
people
yeah,
do with it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
and how weirdly everyone's born with sort of a different set of skills. Like some are learned, but some
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
be sort of, it's the nature nurture debate, isn't it? It's like some have just got this natural ability to do things, and other people will learn it over a lifetime. But it's our collaboration as humans and as
yeah.
people that make everything
Yeah, yeah,
quite
yeah,
amazing.
exactly, exactly. I mean, in some ways, this is jumping slightly forward to my answer on most amazing thing about Boston is that it is that the resilience of people, the ability of people to do things that you never thought was possible. Well, and that's sort of sometimes that climbing mountains, and sometimes it's coping with extraordinary personal situations or whatever.
Yeah, Yeah, yeah. I think that's the thing. So I suppose we extend this. I don't know if you wanted, whilst we're on it, about Boston. Did you want to extend upon that within the context of Boston about the resilience?
Well, I mean, so I think so the most amazing thing about Boston that I said was resilience, and I think Boston has been through these extraordinary, various different times. Whether it's being sort of, whether it's the negative headlines that it's attracted, or sometimes around the extent of the Brexit vote, or sometimes around some of the crime, or sometimes about being somewhere with this extraordinary history, sort of going back to being at one point the second most valuable port after London, or all that sort of stuff. It's been round so many blocks. And yeah, there are some people that are really grumpy about what sort of a state it's in today, and there are others that are really optimistic about what the future looks like. And I think that sense of a place that is important historically, but also is able to understand huge challenges in a diverse population, I think has been genuinely inspirational. And that's people always say it's a privilege to serve and all that, and it is. But how do you sort of translate that into real human terms? It's by talking to the people, and the more I've seen of that resilience, the more powerful it is.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And I suppose almost 10 years ago this year was the flood, and the resilience there, and resilience to get through stuff. So are you saying about that? We've Bostonians have always showed a resilience, and there's a during those
Yeah,
changes
I know.
it's about having that to get through
Exactly.
those things.
I think that's right, and that it's a place that has obviously changed a lot, but has maintained that character of the individuals throughout all of it. And the flood's a really good example of, for instance, I remember. My father-in-law was a teacher at Boston Grammar. Some of his labs, science teachers, some of his labs got flooded during that flood and were completely unusable. And the talking to him back then about how the kids were coping, how the staff were coping as well, of course. Really powerful stories of sort of success in adversity, of people still doing well in their exams, all that stuff. So I just think there's a lot there to celebrate, and sometimes Boston forgets how much celebrating it deserves.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So before we finish, I'm going to go through all your choices again and see if you're happy to stick. So your most amazing person. You can change if you want, but I don't. So your most amazing person, Queen Elizabeth II. Most amazing object, cheese. The most amazing animal was the manatee. The most amazing quote was "Let us sit upon the ground" by Richard II. Your most amazing book is In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. And your most amazing thing ever was people. Yeah,
I wouldn't change a thing.
Wouldn't change. Yeah. And I think the word that you use through, I think you have the perfect mix between sort of your words, pretentious and really down to earth with the manatee in the cheese. So, yeah. But they're also very interesting because I'd never heard of the quote or the or the book. And if I'm honest,
we're expanding universe. Good.
So equally, if you're watching this podcast on the r-amazing.com website, you can scroll down and you can vote on whether you agree with Matt's choices.
Oh no!
All it is a yes or no. It's a little tick or cross whether you agree. So you can vote on there, and that's that. So have you got anything you wanted to promote? Because sometimes people come on to have things to promote, and I didn't know if you
no. Look, I think it would be shameless of me to promote how people should vote at the election. So I'll leave people to make up their own minds. But I do think if I can promote anything, it would be to encourage people to get in touch with if they've got issues they might want me to try and help sort out, or if they've got opinions on what I should be doing or what other people should be doing. I always think getting in touch is the starting point.
Yeah, perfect. And I can put your details on the website, or your link to your website to get
Fantastic.
in contact if
Lovely.
anyone needs to. So, like I said, visit the website to vote if you agree with Matt's, and we'll be back next week. And thank you for your time, Matt, and thank you for sharing your amazings. And we'll see you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers.